when God marks men in their foreheads. The introduction to this topic is found in Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 to 3, where it records how God in the last day seals his servants in their foreheads. And after these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor in any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Four angels, four corners, four winds. What does it mean? It really denotes universality, worldwide. And here we have represented the four angels holding the four winds. In prophecy, in scripture, winds denote war, strife, and commotion, the judgments of God. In fact, it really alludes to the final events when the wrath of God is poured upon this world, and it's likened to a mighty whirlwind, according to Jeremiah 25, and it brings about the destruction of all those who have deliberately rejected God and his truth. And here we have the four angels holding back the winds, holding back the judgments of God, until his people are sealed in their foreheads. And by the way, in reading back in the 6th chapter of Revelation, the previous verses to this, we have introduced what is called the 6th seal. There are 7 seals mentioned in Revelation, and we are now living in the time of the 6th seal. And it says, when he'd opened the 6th seal, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars as a fig tree casts her untimely or green figs when she's shaken of a mighty wind. Now all those things, those events have been fulfilled. They have come. The great earthquake of Lisbon, the greatest known to that time, occurred in 1755. The sun was blacked out in 1780 and the moon the same night. The stars fell in 3 mighty falls, 1799, 1833, and 1866. And then we have the next event here, and this is yet to come. And this really introduces us to the return of Christ, for it says, on the heaven, the atmospheric heaven, departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. What a tremendous event this will be. And then it describes all the unsaved, the unready, at the return of Christ, and their reaction when they see the sign way on the eastern horizon that Christ is coming back. And it says the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, the mighty men, every bondman and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? What a terrific picture this is, my friends, of the screaming millions of unsaved, unready. And when at last it comes, the very event they've derided and ridiculed, at last they see him come, and they scream, as it were, to the mountains and rocks. And their cry is, the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? And that's a terrific question. Who shall stand in the day when the Lord comes? And the answer is given in chapter 7, the next chapter of Revelation. And it shows that he that has the seal of God in his forehead, he will be able to stand when the heavens burst asunder, and Christ is beheld coming down the skies, my friends, as the great judge of all the earth. So there is that terrific picture, and which introduces to us the great seal of God that is to be placed in the foreheads of his people. Now then, so the question is, my friends, what is the seal? What is the seal that is to protect God's people? And, we find that seals are connected with nations, with governments, with kingdoms. Every authority has its seal, for instance. Every government, every bill that's passed through Parliament must have a recognised seal, you see. It's a mark or badge denoting the authority of the one. We find in the scriptures often seals are brought to view. It mentions King Ahab, who sealed a certain thing with his seal, you see, and stamped it. They generally had a mark on a ring, a seal on their ring, you see, and just stamped it or pushed it into wax or something like that, and that was the seal. Now, we find all legal documents have a seal attached to them. Now, when you examine a seal, you'll find that it has three things, three items. It has the name of the person or authority, it has the title, and it has the dominion or the territory of that authority. Now, for instance, the most common, or perhaps the easiest way to illustrate a seal is the seal of our Queen. And what is it? Well, it has three things. Elizabeth II, that's her name. Title, Queen. And her territory, all Britain. There you have the three things. You see, you have a seal. It'll be your name, you see, but there may be two of you, of the two people with the same name, so you put down your occupation, you see. And in case there are two people with the same name and same occupation, you put down your address. That denotes your territory or your dominion, you see, where you hold sway, where you actually are, where you exist, you see. And it's those three things that make up the seal. So now we're looking for the seal of God. And we find, according to Isaiah 8, verse 16, that the seal of God is connected with his law. For in this verse it says, it's really referring now to the last work of God in the last days, and it says, seal the law among my disciples. There's a sealing, you see, connected with the law of God. And so, let's examine then the law of God. For remember, no law is valid unless it does have a seal. And most laws, of course, have the seal at the bottom of the law. So let us have a glance then at God's great law. And what is God's law? Fear God and keep his commandments, remember, for this is the whole duty of man. And that is God's great moral law. Now, of course, we know there are various laws, but the great moral law of God is the Ten Commandments. So we will go through each commandment to see if we can find the three items that comprise God's seal. Now, the first commandment, in verse 3 of chapter 20 of Exodus, declares, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." Now, does this contain any of those three items? No, it really doesn't. It doesn't tell us who that God is in that particular commandment. Now, the second commandment in verse 4 says, "Thou shalt not make to thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that's in heaven above, or in the earth beneath, or that's in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God." Now there's his name. Jehovah thy God is the original. So there's his name. And if we go on, it doesn't mention anything else there in that commandment to indicate his title or his dominion. So we pass over that, and perhaps I'd better read it just so that you'll be clear. It says, "Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy to thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments." That's a beautiful promise. All right, so let's come now to the third commandment and see if we can find the three items comprising the seal there. And verse 7 says, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain." Now notice it mentions his name, the Lord, which in the original is Jehovah or Yahweh. And that's all it tells us. It doesn't say what his title is or what his dominion or territory is. So the seal then is not in those first three commandments. Now we will bypass the fourth commandment, which of course is so often a controversial commandment, and we'll bypass that now for the time being, and we'll come down now to the fifth commandment. And remember, we're now on the second table of the law. And what does the fifth commandment say? "Honour thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee." Now there's his name only. The other two items comprising the seal are not there. All right, let's have a look at the next commandment. "Thou shalt not kill." Now there's nothing there. "Thou shalt not commit adultery." There's nothing there. "Thou shalt not steal." Nothing there. "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbour." There's nothing there. "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's house, or his wife, his manservant, his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbour's." So, friends, in those 9 commandments, we cannot discover the three items that comprise the seal of God in connection with his law. Now we remember we have missed out, we omitted one commandment, the central commandment there. Actually, it's the longest commandment of all. It has more in it, more words in it than any of the other commandments. And that, of course, is the fourth commandment, and the commandment dealing with the Sabbath. But surely, would the law, would the seal of God be there? Well, let's have a look now. Let's have a close look, an honest look at this. And in verse 8, it declares, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labour and do all thy work." Now, so far, we don't see the three items comprising the seal, do we? All right, let's continue. Verse 10, "But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God." Now there you have his name, as is the same in some of the other commandments. "In it," that means in the Sabbath, "thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates." Why? Why not do any work? Why observe this special day? And verse 11 answers, "For in 6 days the Lord, or Jehovah, made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." Now, in that reason given for the observance of the Sabbath, friends, we find the three items that comprise the seal of God. And notice what they are. It has his name, the Lord thy God. And then it says, "The Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is." Now, there we have actually revealed to us who this God is. It's the one who made. It's the Creator. You see, the one who made the universe, that made this earth, that made us. And this is the reason, of course, why this commandment is brought to view. It shows where we came from, you see, and the Sabbath's to remind us of who made us, where we came from, what our origin is, why we're here, and where we're going, you see. And so, there it is. We have the second one, the title of God, the Creator. See? The Lord, or Jehovah, Creator. And now the third thing, His territory or dominion. And there we have it. The heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. And that really embraces the universe. For you take heaven and all that's in heaven. And that refers also, my friends, to the second heavens and to the life-filled universes that roll throughout space. Heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. Now then, so you see, it indicates there quite clearly that in the Sabbath commandment we have the three things that comprise the seed of God. And of course, remember that the Sabbath is the memorial of creation. It's creation's memorial. And creation, my friends, reveals the true God. The true God. That is how we distinguish the true God from all false gods. The fact that He can create. Psalm 96 verse 5 declares, all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Get the thought? What distinguishes Him as the true God? He made the heavens. And again in Psalm 95 verses 3 to 6, for the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In His hand are the deep places of the earth. The strength of the hills is His also. The sea is His, and He made it, and His hands formed the dry land. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture and the sheep of His hand. Those are beautiful words, you see, and they indicate that God is being the Creator. He is our God. Now we find in the 10th chapter of the book of Jeremiah, verses 10 to 12, that again it is emphasized that the true God is recognized by the fact that He's the Creator. And in verse 10 it says, but the Lord is the true God. He is the living God and an everlasting King. At His wrath the earth shall tremble, and the nations shall not be able to abide His indignation. Thus shall you say to them, that means to those who are not worshipping the true God, thus shall you say to them, the gods that have not made the heavens and the earth, even they shall perish from the earth and from under these heavens. He, speaking of the true God, hath made the earth by His power. He hath established the world by His wisdom, and hath stretched out the heavens by His discretion. So there it is. The fact that the God can create, Jehovah can create, is the great creator of all things, that establishes Him indisputably as the true and only God. All other gods, or so-called gods, my friends, are false gods. And remember, the Sabbath of the fourth commandment, the seventh-day Sabbath, is the great sign, or memorial of creation. It's the sign of the true God, you see. And we find that in Scripture the words sign and seal often are used synonymously. In fact, in Wycliffe's translation of Revelation chapter 7, instead of seal of God, he says there, the sign of God. The Douay version says the same thing. The sign of God in their foreheads. And when we read Exodus 31, 16 and 17, it is clearly stated there that the Sabbath is to be a sign. So you see, and sign and seal are used synonymously. It says, wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath. And who are the children of Israel? Well, anciently, of course, they were the Jews. Who are the children of Israel today? Who is the true Israel? My friends, every true believer, every born-again person is an Israelite in the sight of God. If you be Christ's, then are you Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. See that? Abraham's seed was Israel. Now then, so he says, the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. It's a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. So there we have the Sabbath brought to view as the great sign between God and his people, the sign of the true God. It's an outward sign, you see. It's something that cannot be hid. It makes a person distinctive. And this has been deliberately planned by the Creator in order to attract people, you see, to the fact of creation, that he has created all things, and therefore he is the true God. Now, not only is the Sabbath a memorial or sign of creation and the seal of God, but you know, friends, the Sabbath is also a marvelous sign of grace. For reading in Ezekiel the 20th chapter and the 12th verse, there the prophet declares under inspiration in connection with the Sabbath, moreover, I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I'm the Lord that sanctify them. And notice that the Sabbath is a sign that God is sanctifying them, or sanctifying us, sanctifying his people. Now what does sanctify mean? Sanctify means to make holy. You see? To make holy, to purify. And the Sabbath is a sign that God is purifying his people. And what is it that purifies his people, makes them holy? It's the grace of God, the grace of Christ. It's the gospel of Christ. So, my friends, the Sabbath then is a sign of grace, the sign that the grace of Christ is working in a man's heart and changing him so that he will reflect the image of Jesus Christ. So it's a sign, you see, of creation is the Sabbath, and it's a sign that God is recreating in us a new heart and a new character. And so in that sense, you see, the Sabbath is God's great seal. Now, of course, you see, so many people have said and do say, and I even have said this myself in years gone by, well, in connection with the Sabbath, well, now what's the difference in a day? What difference does a day make? You see, now, friends, you can begin to see maybe that there is a difference. It's what's behind the day that matters. Every day, of course, is alike. They're 24 hours in length. They're formed of day and night. The sun rises and sets, you see. But it's what's behind the day that matters. And here we find, my friends, that behind the Sabbath is the true God. It's his sign. It's his flag, you see. It's his badge. God is behind the Sabbath. He rested on it. You see, he blessed it. He sanctified it. And so there we have then the evidence that there is something in a day. There really can be something in a day. And there's something in the seventh day. Now it says there in this great prophecy of Revelation 7 that the angels are to hold back the winds of strife until the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads. Sealed in the forehead. Now, how can they be sealed in their foreheads? What's the significance of sealing them in their foreheads? Well, you know, friends, when you read that Sabbath commandment, the first word of it is very, very significant. For remember, it declares, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Now, where is your memory? Where are the powers of your memory? Where are they? They're in the forehead. They're in the forehead. It's a part of your brain. In the forehead. And actually, what this means, my friends, in putting the seal of God into the foreheads of men, of his servants, means to be putting it into their memory, putting it into their mind, you see, part of the brain, that they will not forget it, they'll accept it, and that they'll remember the Sabbath day to hallow it, you see, as the great sign of creation and of the sign of grace. And so, my friends, let's ask this question then. Is this great prediction being fulfilled? Is an angel going forth, implanting the seal of God, the great Sabbath truth, in the memories, in the minds of servants of God around the world, of those who love God? Now remember, in prophecy, an angel denotes a message of God. In Revelation, God's movements are likened to an angel that come from above. But the movements of the great enemy are likened to beasts, etc., that come from beneath. And here is an angel that comes from above. It comes from the east, you see. And here is brought to view a message of God going to the world and calling people back to the lost truths. And one of them in particular is the lost truth of the seventh day Sabbath, calling them back to remember God as the great creator, and in order to prepare for the coming of Jesus and to escape from the judgments of God in the seven last plagues. Now, is there such a movement that is going to the world? There surely is, my friends. There surely is. Since 1844, a message proclaiming the Sabbath truth as the great seal of God is going to the world, and now it's the most widespread religious Protestant movement in the world, working in more languages and dialects and countries than any other Protestant movement. There is a movement fulfilling it, proclaiming the Sabbath as the great seal of God, and leading men and women everywhere to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Now notice it says there, hold will we seal the servants of our God in their forehead. The servants of our God. Now this indicates, you see, that there are Christians, there are servants of God who have not yet received the Sabbath, who do not know about the Sabbath. They're keeping Sunday, believing it is right, living up to the light that they have. They're called servants of God. And of course, we believe in every church there are servants of God, there are Christians in every church. But here, in this great prediction of Revelation 7, God is bringing to his people, wherever they might be, whatever church they might be in, wherever they are, he's bringing to them the truth of the Sabbath as the great sign of creation and the great sign of recreation, the sign of grace. And friends, today, people in churches everywhere around the world, by hundreds and thousands, are listening to the truth concerning the seal of God in the Sabbath, and are responding. Every year, hundreds of thousands are taking their stand. They're turning away from the observance of Sunday, and they're turning back to the seal of God, to the Sabbath of the fourth commandment. So there it is. Now the next question, well now can I get the seal? How do I get it? How do I receive it? In Ezekiel 20 verse 20 it says, and hello, my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you might know that I'm the Lord your God. So how do we get the seal, the sign? By hallowing the Sabbath. And what's hallow mean? Hallow means to keep it holy, to observe it as the Bible commands, not as the Jews kept or keep the Sabbath, but as the Bible teaches us, as Jesus observed it. For remember, he is our great example. He declared he was the Lord of the Sabbath. And in the New Testament we find again and again, he teaches us and set the example as to how we should observe the Sabbath. Remember, he said it was made for man. The Sabbath was not just for the Jew, made for man. It's lawful to do well on the Sabbath, you see. And he taught us how to keep it in order to honor him. So there we have it, my friends. So you see, God today, in these last days, is calling us to come back to the observance of his day, to accept his seal. You see that? And the seal of God, Sabbath observance, is a sign that you're also keeping the other commandments of God. It is a sign of obedience, you see. Hallow my Sabbaths, it says, and they shall be a sign that I am the Lord your God. You see? Now that's interesting. You see, it shows that God considers how we treat that day as to how we treat him. Our attitude toward his Sabbath, toward his seal, toward his flag or his badge, that, you see, indicates our attitude to him. So this puts the Sabbath in a greater light than ever before. You see, it's a sign to God how we treat that day, our attitude to that day, to that great institution which he commanded, which he kept, which he blessed, which he sanctified. He put it apart for a holy use. How we treat that, God takes as the sign as to what we think of him. So, my friends, this is serious then. And reading in Isaiah, the gospel prophet, remember, and the 58th chapter, here we find are laid down three great principles in regard to hallowing the Sabbath. And listen now while I read them. In verse 13, if thou turn away thy foot from off the Sabbath, or rather from the Sabbath, that means from off the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, notice that the Sabbath isn't to be a day of misery, but a delight, the holy of the Lord, and shall honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words, then shalt thou delight thyself in the Lord. And I'll cause thee to ride on the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken. That's a beautiful promise, and it's amazing the number of promises God makes to his people when they observe the Sabbath. And of course, remember, we cannot really keep the Sabbath until we accept Christ as our Savior and are born again. And when we are, then we find, when we come to this knowledge, that we want to keep the Sabbath. We just find ourselves wanting to keep it, you see. And here God God offers or makes to us a very wonderful promise. If you turn thy foot from off the Sabbath, you see, from treading it down. And friends, so many of us have been brought up to tread the true Sabbath down, not realizing, you see. Our forebears did it in ignorance, you see. And now God says, if you will turn your foot from treading down the Sabbath and call the Sabbath a delight, God's holy day, and honor him, you see, by its true observance, then you'll ride on the high places of the earth. Oh, what a marvelous thing. What a marvelous thing. And remember, he says that when we do this, we honor him. We honor him. Isn't that beautiful? And so, my friends, in fulfillment of this great prediction of Revelation chapter 7, in these last days, before the second coming of Christ, in hundreds of languages, the great truth of the Sabbath as the seal of the living God is going to the population of the world, calling out a people, marking them off as distinct. And God intends that to be. The Sabbath makes us distinctive. It attracts attention. And this is deliberate, you see, on the part of God, in order that men might hear of it all the more readily. I remember once a padre went to an army camp to find a particular Seventh-day Adventist. But all he knew was that his name was Griffin. He didn't know anything else about him. And in this army camp there must have been thousands and thousands of soldiers. Well, at any rate, he went up to the inquiry office and he told them that he wanted to see a man called Griffin. And he said to him, well, now, there's nothing I know about him, but his name's Griffin. And they looked at him, in amazement. They said, how on earth do you think that we can possibly find a man called Griffin when there's probably scores of them here by that name? And the only thing that the man could say was, well, look, he's a Saturday man. He keeps Saturday. Oh, they said, we know who that is. And of all those thousands of men, they were able to pick out that man, you see. Now, friends, that is what the Sabbath does. It it distinguishes us, you see. It's distinctive. That is deliberately done by God that we might be a witness to others. Now, when we read back in ancient history, we find that God has marked his people in days gone by. You know, when the plagues came upon Egypt, before the children of Israel were delivered, 10 terrible plagues, remember, were sent upon that people. The first 3 plagues affected everyone, the Israelites as well as the Egyptians. But the last 7 fell only on the Egyptians. And the reason they did not fall upon the Israelites, upon God's people, was that God gave instruction to the Israelites that they were to mark their houses. They were to kill a lamb, and they were to take the blood and put blood marks over the door and down the sides. And if they did that, they were promised that the angel would pass over their houses. And in commemoration of that, they celebrated a feast called the Passover, because the angel passed over their houses and delivered them, you see, from the plagues, particularly the plagues concerning the destruction of the firstborn. Now, of course, you can just imagine that some people could have responded to the instruction. Well, what difference does a bit of blood make? What difference does a mark make on the door. Why, God can protect us without that mark. You see? How paltry. Why do that? Aren't we believers? Don't we belong to God? We've never done this before. You see, do you mean to tell me we've all been wrong? You see, but this was special instruction for a special time. It was a special test in the crisis. And my friends, when that night came, in the Israelite father who had failed to apply the blood over the door of his house, in the morning he found his firstborn dead. But all those who applied the blood, who followed the instruction, who were faithful, their firstborn in the morning was still alive. They had been delivered. The angel had passed over them. So there it was, you see. They had the mark. They had the seal. They had the mark of protection. And how important that was. And so, my friends, today, in these last days, in the crisis that is coming upon us as God's people, when the judgments of God are to come, when the winds are going to be let go, God's people will need a mark. They'll need a seal, you see. And while in days gone by the Sabbath has not been made a test by God, in these last days it is being made a test of our faithfulness, a test of our love for God, a sign of our obedience, a sign that we're letting God work within us to sanctify us and to prepare us for translation. So the big question is, my friends, have I surrendered my heart, my mind to Jesus Christ fully? Am I letting Him make me holy? Am I letting Him lead me in the path of obedience? Am I endeavoring to keep that fourth commandment as well as all the other commandments of Jesus Christ? Do I find in my heart a desire to do what He wants me to do? If not, it indicates that He is not fully reigning in my heart. And so, my friends, the first call then is for us to surrender to Jesus Christ again, to give Him our hearts, to invite Him into our lives, to do for us what we can't do for ourselves. And when we do, my friends, when we do, we find then that we just want to keep His commandments. We want to walk in the way of His commandments. And remember, Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. And that refers to the 10 commandments as well as all the other commandments. You see. Remember the Apostle John said, hereby do we know that we know Him, if we keep His commandments. We don't keep the commandments. We don't keep the Sabbath to be saved. Oh no, we're saved by grace alone. But we keep the commandments because we love Christ. It's a sign of our love. Hereby do we know that we know Him, if we keep His commandments. He that says he knows Him and keeps not His commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. You see? So if we deliberately transgress any of God's commandments, deliberately, it's a sign we don't really know Him. We don't really know Him. So, my friends, there it is. And let me say to you that when we begin to bring our lives into line with that fourth commandment, I tell you, we have the blessing of God. God helps us, friends. He really does. Remember, he says, if we turn away our foot from off the Sabbath and honor him, he declares, him will I honor. 1 Samuel 2:30. Him that honors me will I honor. And oh, friends, I know how true that is. God honors those that honor him. And he honors those in particular we have found who put self aside and put Christ first and accept the seal of the living God. Now maybe in receiving the seal it means giving up something. Listen, my friends, if it means that, it's a blessing in disguise. It might mean changing your employment. Yes, my friends, and if that is so, that is good. You know, the Christian should never be in any employment where he cannot have the blessing and the protection of our Heavenly Father. We should not be in any employment where we're deliberately transgressing the commandments of God. Now, isn't that right? Now, maybe there's something else that affects your source of income. Oh, my friends, this is a test, you see. But let me tell you, when we honor God, he promises, I will honor him. And he does, my friends. The blessings we receive more than make up for the things that we may feel that we're going to lose. And remember, Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things, these other things, your living, and all the other things that go with the mundane things of life, all these things shall be added unto you. Now that is a promise, a guarantee, my friends, and let me tell you that God keeps his word. I know. I have proved it so, and I've seen it proved in the lives of thousands of other people. God keeps his words. He that honors me, him will I honor. Friends, may the Lord help us to so submit to him that we may really experience the truth that he honors us if we honor him, is my sincere prayer.